A young boy wakes up inside a moving elevator, scared and sick. He doesn't know where he is or how he got there. He shouts for help, but no one answers. The elevator keeps going up until it suddenly stops and the doors open. On the other side, he sees a bunch of teenage boys standing in a clearing, talking and laughing like it's just another normal day. They stare at him like he's a strange new animal. Some of them start making fun of him, laughing when they see how confused and frightened he is. The boy, who soon learns his name is Thomas, realizes he doesn't remember anything about himself or his past. Fear kicks in and he tries to run, but he trips and falls hard. Looking up, he sees huge stone walls surrounding the place like a giant box. Nothing makes sense to him. He doesn't know who these people are, where he is, or how to get out. Before he can figure anything out, the others force him into a locked space, tossing him in like a prisoner. Later, a boy named Albie, who seems to be in charge, walks over to Thomas and tries to calm him down. He gently asks for Thomas's name, but Thomas shakes his head. He remembers nothing. Albie tells him not to worry, saying the name will come back eventually. Then Albie starts showing him around, explaining bits and pieces about the strange place they're stuck in. Albie points out the area where they live, telling Thomas that it's where they cook, eat, and sleep. They've built small shelters out of whatever they could find. He also explains that when they need supplies like clothes, tools, or food, they come up from below in something called the box. It's how they survive in this strange place. Thomas asks the big question, who brings them to the unknown location? Albie shrugs and says, nobody knows. Then he brings over Newt, the second in command, who steps in when Albie isn't around. Newt doesn't waste time. He tells Thomas there are 3 main rules everyone follows. First, do your fair share of the work. Second, never hurt another glader. And third, and this one is the most serious, never go past the walls that surround them. Soon after, a younger boy named Chuck starts chatting with Thomas. He's friendly and eager, trying to make him feel welcome. But when Chuck sees Thomas walking toward one of the massive stone walls, his face goes pale. He quickly rushes after him, clearly scared. Chuck warns him not to get too close. Whatever's beyond that wall isn't just off limits, it's deadly. But Thomas isn't scared. He's intrigued. The wall pulls at his curiosity, even with Chuck nervously pleading him to stay back. Right then, a group of sweaty, fast-moving boys rushes in through a narrow opening in the wall. Thomas watches them, puzzled. If it's so dangerous out there, why are these guys allowed to go? Chuck explains they're called the Runners. They're the only ones allowed into the maze because they know it better than anyone. Still, Thomas isn't convinced. He watches them disappear into the crowd, a stubborn interest growing in his eyes. Out of nowhere, a boy named Gally shows up and shoves Thomas back, stopping him from moving closer to the wall. Thomas pushes back, not ready to be handled like that. The two start to struggle, and the noise draws a crowd. Tension rises as the boys circle around them, watching closely. Thomas demands to know why they're trying to hold him back. Albie quickly steps in, trying to defuse the situation before it gets worse. Just then, a strange sound rumbles from deep inside the wall, cutting through the air like a warning. Thomas stands frozen, unsure whether to be scared or angry. Gally backs off, throwing one last warning over his shoulder, saying next time he won't be so patient. The crowd slowly breaks apart, the moment fading. Albie leans in close to Thomas, speaking just loud enough for him to hear. With a faint smirk, he says, "This is how things work around here. Welcome to the Gladers." That evening, Newt finds Thomas sitting alone and joins him for a quiet chat. He hands Thomas a drink, trying to lighten the mood. Thomas takes a sip and makes a face. Whatever it is, he clearly hates the taste. Newt chuckles and shrugs it off, then starts talking about the maze. He tells Thomas that Gally once saved his life, even if he can be rough. But Newt doesn't sugarcoat things. The maze, he says, is the worst place anyone can end up in. It's not just big, it's deadly. Newt nods toward the group of boys known as the Runners. He explains that for the last 3 years, they've been exploring and drawing maps of the maze every day, trying to find a way out. But progress is slow and danger is constant. He looks serious as he warns Thomas, if someone gets stuck in the maze after dark, that's the end. No one has ever made it through a night in there. Then he mentions something worse than the maze itself, creatures called grievers. No one's ever clearly seen one, but the stories alone are enough to scare everyone. While Newt explains everything, Thomas starts to feel the weight of it all. The walls, the maze, the rules, it feels like a cage. He tries to remember anything from before, but his mind is still blank. Even his own name barely came back. As they walk, Newt begins pointing out the other boys, introducing them one at a time. Then, without hesitation, Thomas says he wants to become a runner. Newt stops and stares at him, clearly caught off guard. Most boys avoid the maze at all costs. No one volunteers for that job. Later on, Thomas ends up in a rough game with Gally, where the goal is simple: shove the other person out of a drawn circle. The other boys gather around, shouting and cheering, making it feel like some kind of twisted sport. When a few of the younger ones call out Thomas's name, he feels a sudden boost of confidence. But Gally moves fast and strong, taking control from the start. For him, it's barely a challenge. Thomas finds himself struggling just to stay on his feet. Right in the middle of the game, something shifts in Thomas's head. A sudden flash. His name comes back to him. He freezes, looks around, and tells everyone that he remembers. His name is Thomas. The boys break into cheers, clapping and laughing, the game forgotten. But the moment doesn't last. A deep, eerie sound rolls out from the maze wall, low and mechanical. Thomas looks around, confused, and asks what it is. Gally steps forward, his tone flat. That sound, he says, means the grievers are moving. But he adds quickly, Thomas is safe, as long as he stays with them. Thomas has a brief flash in his sleep, a memory of being in a lab, faces blurred, voices echoing. But before he can hold on to it, he's woken by Albie at dawn. Albie leads him to a quiet part of the glade, a wall filled with names scratched into the stone. He says this is where every boy leaves a mark. Albie hands him a knife and tells him to add his name too. It's a moment that feels almost proud, but Albie's face stays serious. He says life here might seem fine on the surface, but every boy has lived through something heavy. As Thomas starts to carve, he notices that some names have lines drawn through them. When he asks about it, Albie doesn't explain, just mutters dark days and walks away, leaving Thomas standing there uneasy. Not long after, Thomas grows restless with all the half-answers and silence. While helping Newt with chores, he keeps asking questions. Has anyone ever tried climbing the wall? Newt says they have, but the vines stop short near the top, leaving nothing to hold on to. Thomas brings up other ways out, like escaping through the box or some hidden path, but Newt cuts him off. His voice tightens as he says they've tested everything. The maze, as dangerous as it is the only chance they've got. Tired of the back and forth, Newt tells Thomas to quit talking and go fetch some fertilizer from the woods nearby. While looking for the fertilizer near the edge of the woods, Thomas stops in his tracks. Something's not right. He spots bones on the ground, clearly human, picked clean and scattered like trash. His stomach turns and panic creeps in. Before he can even move, someone steps out from behind a tree. It's Ben, and something about him is off. Out of nowhere, Ben charges at Thomas, eyes wild and full of rage. He grabs Thomas by the neck, trying to choke the air out of him. Thomas fights back, gasping, reaching for anything nearby. His hand lands on a skull, and with all the strength he has, he smashes it against Ben's head. The grip loosens. Thomas breaks free and bolts, sprinting through the trees, yelling for help as he runs. Newt rushes in and strikes Ben hard, knocking him to the ground. The group gathers around, and it doesn't take long for them to see the truth. Ben's been stung. His skin is pale, his eyes wild, and he's begging them to save him. But Albie doesn't wait. He steps forward and gives the order. Ben is to be thrown into the pit. The others hesitate for a second, but Albie's voice is final. Despite Ben's cries and pleas, they drag him away. Later on, Thomas, still rattled by what happened, pulls Albie aside and asks what's wrong with Ben. Albie tells him it's something they call the changing. It happens to anyone stung by the grievers. There's no real cure, only pain, confusion, and fear. And the longer it goes on, the worse it gets. Albie adds that once the changing starts, the person becomes a threat. The infection messes with their mind, and no one's safe around them. He then asks Thomas what Ben said during the attack. Thomas, still uneasy, says Ben claimed to have seen him before and blamed him for everything. Albie doesn't say much after that. He just nods, tells Thomas to get some rest, and walks away, leaving more questions than answers. At the edge of the glade, Albie and a few others used long poles to force Ben toward the maze entrance. Ben begs them to stop, shouting that he can recover, that he'll be fine, but no one moves to help. The heavy wall begins to slide shut behind him, the sound echoing through the clearing. In seconds, Ben is gone, locked inside. The boys stand in silence, the air heavy with guilt and fear. Afterward, Albie turns to the others and says that Ben now belongs to the maze. Slowly, they all walk away, leaving the area empty. That night, while the camp is quiet, Gally returns to the wall of names and scratches out Ben's name. Meanwhile, Thomas sleeps restlessly. He's pulled back into a strange dream, just like the one before. He's in the same lab, but this time there's someone else there too. A young woman, her face almost familiar. The next morning, Thomas notices Albie preparing to head into the maze and questions it. After all, Albie isn't a runner. Newt answers without hesitation. Things are different now, he says. Albie needs to retrace Ben's path before the maze shifts again at sunset. Thomas doesn't like it. He's worried Albie might end up like Ben, lost or worse. But Newt brushes it off, saying Albie knows what he's doing. Before anything else can be said, dark clouds roll in and heavy rain begins to fall, forcing the boys to pause their work and run for cover. As the sun drops lower, the gladers gather near the wall, tense and silent. Thomas watches with the rest, eyes locked on the maze entrance. Finally, Albie and Minho appear, dragging themselves forward, but something's clearly wrong. Albie is barely able to stand, his body slumped and bloodied. The others cheer faintly, relieved they made it back, but Thomas doesn't wait. He rushes forward to help, pulling Albie's arm over his shoulder. Together, they stumble toward the exit, but the wall begins to move. The doors start closing, the gap shrinking fast. Without thinking, Thomas sprints forward and slips inside just before the stone doors slam shut behind him. Gasps rise from the other boys still inside the glade. Minho turns to Thomas, out of breath and furious. He tells him bluntly, by stepping into the maze, Thomas has just signed his own death sentence. Thomas quickly realizes Albie has been stung. He urges Minho to help him move Albie to safety, somewhere the grievers can't reach. Minho clearly isn't thrilled about the idea, but he agrees. Together, they start lifting Albie toward a ledge, hoping to get him off the ground. Suddenly, a strange and awful sound echoes through the maze. Minho freezes, eyes wide with terror. Without a word, he bolts, leaving Thomas behind. Alone now, Thomas hears something large and mechanical approaching. Then he sees it, a griever. With no time to think, Thomas hides in a narrow gap beneath some debris. But the creature spots him. It lunges, and Thomas runs, faster than he thought possible. He weaves through the maze, the griever close behind. At the last second, he leaps over a low wall. The griever tries to follow but gets tangled in some thick plants. That brief moment is all Thomas needs to vanish into the dark maze. Minho, now steady again, shouts for Thomas to hurry as the maze starts shifting around them, but Thomas doesn't run. Instead, he makes a bold move. He gets the griever's attention and lures it away, forcing it to chase him through the narrowing paths. The walls begin to move faster, grinding shut. At the last possible second, the griever gets stuck between them. The maze finishes the job, crushing the creature completely. When the dust settles, Thomas, Minho, and the barely conscious Albie emerge from the maze. The gladers stare in shock. No one expected to see them alive. Thomas admits he saw the griever up close, but Minho shakes his head and corrects him. Thomas didn't just see it, he killed it. After the trio returns, Gally steps forward, clearly angry. He says Thomas broke their biggest rule by entering the maze and insists there should be consequences. But the rest of the gladers stay quiet, uncertain. No one has ever killed a griever before, and Thomas just did the impossible. With Albie still unconscious, leadership falls to Newt. He turns to Minho and asks for his opinion. Minho doesn't hesitate. He admits that he panicked and ran when the griever came, leaving Albie behind. But Thomas didn't. He faced the creature, saved Albie, and somehow managed to kill it. That, Minho says, changes everything. Instead of punishment, he suggests something else. Make Thomas a runner. As the boys argue over what to do next, a loud metallic groan cuts through the air. The box is rising. Everyone rushes over, expecting supplies. But instead, they find something no one's ever seen before. A girl. It's the first time a female has ever arrived in the glade, and the shock is immediate. In her hand is a crumpled note with just a few words. She is the last one ever. The message hits hard, leaving them speechless. Before they can make sense of it, the girl stirs. Her eyes flutter open for a brief moment. She whispers Thomas's name, then collapses back into silence, leaving even more questions behind. Though something about the girl feels oddly familiar, Thomas can't place her face or the note. When Newt quietly pulls him aside and asks if he knows her, Thomas shakes his head. He says he doesn't recognize her, and the message doesn't make sense to him either. Newt nods and says they'll have to wait until she wakes up to get any real answers. Later, unable to sit still, Thomas makes up his mind. He needs to go back into the maze. He wants answers, not guesses. Minho isn't thrilled with the idea and tries to talk him out of it at first, but after a pause, he gives in. He tells Thomas to wait for him in the woods. He'll round up a couple of others, and they'll head out together in half an hour. He just warns Thomas to be ready. Minho soon returns, bringing a few trusted gladers with him. Without wasting time, the group slips into the maze, careful and focused. As they wind through its twisting paths, they reach the spot where Thomas had trapped the griever. What's left of it is crushed and lifeless, its body mangled between two walls. Curious, they search the remains and find something strange, an odd device hidden inside the creature's body. It looks important, unlike anything they've seen before. Taking the device, they waste no time and race back toward the glade. The walls begin to shift again, but they make it through just before the maze seals shut for the night. Back at the glade, Thomas examines the device they recovered and notices something strange. The letters on it match the markings found on their supply crates. He points it out to the others, hinting that whoever is sending supplies might also be behind the grievers. The thought unsettles the group. Gally, frustrated and unwilling to believe it, lashes out. He insists Thomas keeps breaking rules and needs to be punished. Rules, he says, are the only thing keeping them alive. Newt steps in with a compromise. Thomas will spend a night in the pit without food as punishment, but he also names him a runner, recognizing what he's accomplished. Gally storms off, his anger clear. Later, Minho pulls Thomas aside and shares something he's kept secret for years, the map of the maze. He's been tracking its layout, searching for patterns. Only he and Albie know the full details. As Minho begins explaining the paths and movements, they're interrupted. A group of boys rushes in with urgent news. The girl has woken up. Thomas gently approaches the girl, trying to ease her panic by explaining that everyone, including him, arrived the same confusing way. Slowly, she begins to trust him and reveals her name, Teresa. As they talk, she hands him 2 syringes she found in her pocket when she first woke up, deepening the mystery. Later, Thomas convinces Newt to use one of the syringes on Albie, hoping it might reverse the effects of the sting. Though clearly unsure, Newt agrees. But as Thomas leans in to inject Albie, Albie suddenly jolts awake and lashes out. In the chaos, Teresa grabs the syringe and quickly injects him. Albie settles down, his rage fading almost instantly. That night, Thomas serves his punishment in the pit. Chuck sneaks in with some food and water, excited about the maze mission planned for the next day. He hands Thomas a small toy, asking him to return it to his parents if he ever gets out. Thomas hands it back and says he'll give it to them himself one day. The following day, Thomas and Minho dash back into the maze. This time, Thomas notices things he hadn't seen before, tiny details, small clues. As they run, the device they recovered starts to emit a loud pulsing sound. They realize it might be leading them somewhere. Following the signal, they reach an unfamiliar section of the maze, one even Minho has never seen. As they begin to explore, the walls and spinning blades suddenly start closing in with violent speed. The maze turns hostile. They run hard, barely escaping with their lives as the trap slams shut behind them. Back in the glade, Minho shares what they found in the maze, a door used by the Grievers during the day. For the first time, the boys see a real chance of escape. Chuck and the others grow hopeful, rallying around Thomas and Minho, but not everyone is convinced. Gally steps forward, voicing his doubt. He warns them that the door could be a trap, hiding dozens of Grievers ready to strike. The group's mood shifts, tension rising as he and Thomas argue fiercely in front of everyone. Before things escalate further, Teresa steps in with urgent news. Albie is awake. They rush to his side, but instead of relief, they're met with something darker. Albie, now conscious, looks broken. He tells them bluntly, there's no way out. Then, turning to Thomas, he adds something even more unsettling. Thomas used to be one of them. A strange, deep sound echoes across the glade, the kind that makes hearts stop. Everyone rushes outside and stares in horror. The maze doors, which are always sealed shut at night, remain wide open. Without warning, walls shift in all directions, and Grievers pour in. Panic explodes. The boys scatter, screaming and dodging the mechanical monsters. In the chaos, Albie spots Chuck about to be caught. Without thinking, he throws himself at the Grievers, buying Chuck time, but losing his own life. Afterward, the glade is quiet, broken, and covered in ruin. Gally, furious and grief-stricken, lashes out at Thomas, blaming him for everything. In a moment of desperation and guilt, Thomas grabs a piece of a Griever and stings himself, hoping it will trigger the return of his lost memories. Gally, now leading most of the Gladders, strips Newt of command and locks Thomas and Teresa in the pit. While inside, Thomas reveals the truth to Newt and Chuck. He and Teresa were once part of the organization behind the maze. They helped build it. Teresa doesn't remember it, but Thomas does. Newt listens, tense but focused. He tells Thomas that if there's any chance to end this, he needs to take it. Albie's sacrifice has to mean something. Soon after, Thomas and his allies outsmart Gally and win over several Gladers, urging them to leave the maze behind for good. Thomas insists the glade isn't home, it's a cage. Gally, though still bitter, steps aside and mutters a final wish for their survival. Inside the maze, the group fights through a gauntlet of Grievers. They reach a massive metal gate, sealed tight, no way through. Minho shouts the sequence of code numbers they've been collecting. Teresa quickly inputs them into a terminal, hands shaking. At the last second, the gate unlocks, and the doors slide open. The group rushes through, escaping the maze at last. After escaping the maze, Thomas and the others enter a strange laboratory. It's quiet and looks like a place meant for experiments. A screen turns on and a woman named Dr. Ava Page appears. She says she's the leader of the World Catastrophe Kill Zone Department. She tells the group they've passed the maze trials. She then explains that the world outside is in terrible shape. Billions of people have died because of disasters, and now a deadly virus is spreading that damages the brain and has no cure. She says the trials were created to find strong survivors, and tells them they are important for what comes next. Suddenly, Gally shows up. He's been stung by a griever and is not thinking clearly. He points a gun at Thomas, but ends up shooting Chuck by mistake. Chuck dies, and everyone is shocked. Minho quickly throws a spear at Gally, killing him. Right after that, a group of armed soldiers arrives and takes the survivors away in a helicopter. In the final scene, a group of unknown people is shown watching everything. They say more kids survived than they expected. Now the survivors are moving on to the next part of the experiment, which is phase 2. So, all right,